On here, there we go. So what we're going to talk about before we get into everything or answer any questions that you have on maybe the midterm or the stuff we're doing following is I have John here. And John, we are going to be working on a project for John that we will start next week, and it will go over the next 2 weeks as part of our retouching project. So we are going to be restoring and touching up and stuff like that a boatload of boat photos. That was such a bad pun.
I was gonna say,
it was horrible. I didn't mean for that to happen, but it just did, and it was good. So we're going to be restoring a whole bunch of photos that we have here. So I've got a couple hundred photos that we will be using and going through and stuff like that. So there is a lot of fun to be had here. So because we're going to be working on this project, I wanted you guys to have a better understanding of what this project is about and what's going to happen with these images when they're finished. So I've asked John to come in and kind of explain this project that he has been working on forever and for a little while longer yet.
Yeah, at least a year.
Yes. So I'm going to let you kind of explain what you've been doing and what we're doing.
All right, well, excuse me. I guess the best thing to start with, I grew up in this area, and I'm a Great Lakes Marine historian, but I have lots of other side interests that go along with that. This project, it relates to a shipwreck called the Daniel J. Morrell, sank in Lake Huron, November 29th of 1966. Now, the reason I got involved with this, I have to crank the clock way back to when I was 8 years old, and I'm guessing some of you have probably heard of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Yeah, I see some nods. Okay. What ended up happening, because I was never into shipwrecks, didn't even know these things happened in the Great Lakes, but my grandfather used to haul steel here locally, and he hauled steel that built what's called the Gravers Dock, where they build ships in Sturgeon Bay. And then he also hauled steel bridge beams for the bridge between Alloway and Ashwaubenon, Highway 172. That bridge opened on November 10th, 1975, the same date that the Fitzgerald sank. My grandfather took us on the opening day bridge walk, and I remember seeing the paper the next day and talked about the bridge walk on the front page of the paper, and down below they talked about the Fitzgerald. So my interest kind of got kindled. The following year, my mother got me a book by a famous author who's a friend of mine now. His name's Frederick Stonehouse. He writes a lot of shipwreck books, and it was his book on the Edmund Fitzgerald. And I read that thing cover to cover. I still have it. The pages are falling out. I've used it so much. But inside of there were pictures of other ships that had sank on the Great Lakes. Big ships, 600, 700 feet long. One of them was the Daniel J. Morrell. Now, you have to understand that I've been involved with sports and athletics all of my life. And so people always think that, oh, your heroes are guys like Brett Favre and Robin Yount, got to get our Brewer inference in today. But that wasn't the case. The Daniel J. Morrell sank, 29 men were on it, 1 survived. It was a 600-foot long ore carrier built in 1906, Bay City, Michigan, split in half. And everybody died except one man, Dennis Hale.
This guy.
That's his book. Okay, and I'm going to leave that here for you. Anyway, they talked about him in Frederick Stonehouse's book. And I didn't want to meet Brett Favre and Robin Yount. I wanted to meet Dennis Hale. Well, he was a recluse for about 16 years after the wreck. And the reason why is, number one, he didn't think people would necessarily believe some of the things that happened to him when he was on the raft. And I want you to picture this. Picture November weather, basically December because it's 29th of November, on a raft in Lake Huron with 3 of your dead sailor friends around you, 20-some degree weather, 40-foot waves, snow, cold, with nothing on but your underwear and a navy pea coat. And he survived. So what ended up happening is he became kind of a recluse. And then in 1982, he was asked to come and be honored at an event in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. The other reason he didn't want to talk about his ordeal was there were families of the other crew members who were like, well, why did you survive and my son didn't, or my grandson didn't? So there was a lot of animosity, and all of these families, you know, from all over the Midwest and even other states kind of became separated. Dennis became a friend of mine because I went up to that event in 1982. My parents took me. I don't think there was a dry eye in the house. I waited till I was, you know, till everybody had gone. I went and introduced myself. And there's a lot of, I call them shipwreck conventions around the Great Lakes, where you go and see what other divers have, you know, found, and they share pictures and what have you. And I've been doing this all my life. And Dennis became a good friend because when he did start speaking, he found that this was therapeutic for him. And it actually helped him a lot, whether it be PTSD types of things, whatever it is. 2015, he passed away. And he passed away from stomach cancer. And his wife, Barb, his widow, had said to me at that time, because I've been involved with museums as everything from curator to executive director to different things like that, I'm tired of living in a museum, because he had artifacts and things all over the house. What do I do with all this stuff? She had his life jacket from the wreck, the flare gun from the raft, you know, other things like that, along with artwork and pictures and other things he collected. She wanted to sell it, and it would sell for big money at an auction house because people just clamor for, you know, shipwreck type artifacts. And the life jacket alone would probably go for at least $10,000. But her big thing was she wanted to help keep the memory of the crew and the ship alive. And I said to her, well, if you sell all this stuff and put it in private hands, people aren't going to see it. The memory's going to die. So I suggested to her, what if you did something where we contacted some of the different shipping, shipwreck, marine, whatever museums around the Great Lakes, and see if one of them would be interested in doing some sort of a permanent exhibit on the wreck. So that, and I started traveling around, calling the different directors, a lot of them who I knew from seeing them at all these different events. A man by the name of Bruce Lynn. He is the executive director at the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum in Whitefish Point, Michigan, almost a straight shot north of here, about 4 or 5 hours. And they have an office of the Shipwreck Historical Society at the locks in Sault Ste. Marie. If you want to look that up, you'll find some information about that. He was real excited about this. So Barb donated everything to that museum, and we have a committee that is actually assembling a new exhibit solely on the Morel that is going to open up in 2020. And they wanted to make it such a big deal, they actually cleared out a whole another building, moved the stuff in that building to another building so this could be done in that existing building. So started working on that, and my end of this, I'm not getting paid a dime to do it, I just enjoy the topic. I had 2 companies that I owned, I sold them. My time's kind of my own, so I've been spending time working on this. My part of this is more on the research end of it. And it kind of morphed into a book that I'm writing now that is going to benefit the museum exhibit. But we have found things like Bethlehem Steel, who owned the ship, covering certain things up, Coast Guard hiding records of things. You would not believe I've been from Denver to Maine doing research on this project. And along with that, trying to interview and locate all 29 families or surviving families of these deceased crew members. And when I meet with them, I'm amazed the number of questions that they ask me as to what I ask them, and to get their stories and hear about their deceased family member as a person, not just as a shipmate. It's been absolutely fascinating. And what ended up happening with all these families, a lot of them don't even know the complete story about what happened because there was an inquiry, an investigation, and then it was done. They also had a settlement for all the deceased sailors, which at the time was a record, $2.75 million. But how it was allocated and all the things that happened at the end, most of these families didn't get a pittance because of it. We're finding out all these things. I've been researching at the National Archives, I've been to the Smithsonian, I can't count how many times I've been sitting in front of one of these at a library going through microfiche and so forth. But that's what this has morphed into, trying to give some answers to these families build this exhibit. And the nice thing about it now is that the Sailors Hall of Fame, which is in Rogers City, Michigan, at another museum there, they are actually going to induct all of these sailors posthumously, which is going to be a neat thing for the families. And I mentioned the Fitzgerald before. All those families are very close because it was very famous. Some of you probably heard a Gordon Lightfoot song about the wreck. Everybody knows about it. They get together every year and celebrate their loved ones. There's another ship, the Carl D. Bradley, which sank in Lake Michigan. Most of their sailors were from that Rogers City area near that museum. They get together every year and they celebrate this. I spoke at a memorial for the Morel. 15 people. The one for the Bradley, 600 in a theater, and there were people waiting outside. Same thing with the Fitzgerald. So this kind of got lost in the middle. All these families don't know each other. We're trying to put this all back together now and honor them the way they should be. So these pictures that we have, you can see some of our, like this is George Dahl. He was one of the crew members. He lived up near Duluth. And hopefully we can improve upon that photo, for example, so it looks a little bit better, whether it be in a book or a museum display or what have you. A lot of these pictures have come from either Dennis Hale's collection, families giving them to us, research online, things we found in archives at museums, what have you. And the ship was built in 1906, so most of these are going to be 100 years old, or 1966 is what now, 53 years? So
yeah,
these are old photos. Can you go to that one?
That one,
yeah.
Yes. Okay. That's going to be in there.
There it is.
That one.
Okay. There's a prize for someone who can help figure this one out, if you can. Okay. This is a helicopter from the Traverse City Coast Guard, 1966. This raft is the forward raft, the one on the front of the boat, from the Morel. You see legs and arms and things sticking up here. Dennis is on that raft. He was rescued 38 hours later by the Coast Guard. This picture was taken by a man by the name of Ralph Polovich. Ralph is a friend of mine. He lives in Port Huron, Michigan. He worked for the Port Huron Times-Herald. I talked to him again a couple of weeks ago because one of the great mysteries when Dennis was interviewed, and if you go through all the different newspapers, media reports, and so forth, it's amazing how one says one thing, one says another, and you have to try to draw all this together. At first, he said that he covered himself up with the other three bodies to help keep him warm. You can imagine how that might not sound so good when it comes out to other families and so forth, or the media in general. So another media report where he was interviewed, oh, I didn't do that at all. Okay, can we do anything to see what the actual position of the bodies are on here if we can clean this up at all? This is a very famous photo. Ralph took some others. There were actually two helicopters. They both landed right in the water because they were on the raft came to ground on a rocky reef about a mile offshore. And Ralph said he was actually sent up in a helicopter in all this wind and so forth. And then he said, no, it wasn't a helicopter. It was a little Cessna. And they're getting buffeted around and so forth. And he wanted to get closer in. He said he was about 600 yards away when he shot the photo. And the pilot told him, no, Ralph, we're not going to make it if we get closer. It's too bad down there. So he wanted to take better photos, but he couldn't. That was as close as he could get.
Is 4 people or is 4 or 3 people?
It looks like 3.
There's Dennis and 3 other sailors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
You have to lower the contrast.
Yeah.
But we're kind of curious to see if we can determine if the bodies are, laying all over, or if, he's buried under one of them, or what, because that would solve mystery. And as much as I love Dennis, I mean, he was a great friend for 30 plus years. Even I have seen changes in his story, different things he said to different people. And I joke with his wife, it's kind of like when you go fishing. First you caught the minnow, and 5 years later it's a shark. I don't want to accuse him of anything, but hey, let's face it, as we get older we forget things, and things change too. But my job as a researcher is to try to do as much as I can to make it as accurate as possible. The idea with this, as far as for the book, there's different chapters. We want to put the appropriate photos with the right things. And then with the museum display, they want to make sure that there's a screen, kind of like what you see here, that will continually rotate all the different photos of the crew. I have about 20 of them. I still need about 9 more. And then the pictures of the ship itself, if you look at all of them, you'll see differences, like they replaced the pilot house 4 times. There's different paint schemes on the side as far as the lettering of the ship, many differences and so forth. But we'll probably have something where there's another screen where when you come in, you can do some interactive, like early years, middle years, right before the wreck, or people can swipe through them on a screen and they can pick and choose the things they want to look at. We're doing a huge model, an HO scale model. It's about 6 feet long. Somebody gave one to Dennis about 10 years back, and we're actually restoring it so it's exactly prototypical to the actual ship, and that's why these photos are very valuable for us too, so we get it right.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the 10-cent tour, but questions, comments, go ahead.
In regards to just like history of the Great Lakes, have you ever been to the North County Maritime Museum?
Absolutely. I've probably been to every maritime museum on the Great Lakes, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to work for the museum.
Okay, yeah, you know Amy?
Yes.
Yeah, she left. We're good friends.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's so funny. So yeah, so your task is going to be, we're gonna talk about different ways to try and restore these techniques and stuff like that as part of our retouching, and we're gonna get all these photos. There's so many of them. It's gonna be awesome that we're just going to divide them up. There are some that we'll see as we weed through them. One might be a lower res file and we have a higher res file of it, so obviously we'll just take the higher res. So we'll start, and I've started to go through a little bit too and find the ones that are low res and high res and stuff like that. So we'll be doing that over the next few weeks.
I thought we were going to be scanning most of these, but it looks like
I thought we were too, but they're all digitized. There's nothing really to scan unless we find one of these that maybe there isn't another version of, it's too small, and we do need to potentially rescan it. John has all the originals.
Yeah, I do have most of the originals.
Yeah, I mean,
and some,
what he scanned.
as I've gotten, as I talk to different people, do you have this? Oh, that's a better one than the one I have, so we've swapped them out. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so where we may need to rescan, we will. There, a huge chunk of these are all high res, so we're probably not going to have to worry too much. And again, some of the earlier ones that are lower res were rescanned, so I don't think there's going to be much of an issue with that. But this will be our project.
All the pictures are for screenings or are for for printing? What is your
most of them will probably be for either just to get up on in the museum, but there will be a lot of them that will go into the book as well. The book is going to be more of a if I use the term coffee table book, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, where there's be color, be more pictures, spreads, things like that. I've taken pictures of things because I have a camera like yours, of course, for the book as well. I located 5 of the logbooks that a diver brought up from the wreck. So there's interesting notes in there, like things like, the first day of the 1959 shipping season, they're barely out into the harbor and the ship is leaking so bad they got 3 inches of water in 2 of the ballast tanks and 15 in another. This was supposed to be repaired, and it wasn't. I was talking to the first mate's son, Phil Capps. His son Gene lives in Florida, and I can hear him on the phone. He's going through papers like crazy. I got to find this letter. Well, before they left the ship in 1965, it's the mate and the captain's responsibility to make a list of work that has to be done, so the ship is seaworthy the next year. And by law, before that ship can go out, the Coast Guard has to inspect it every year. Well, he gets back on the ship. He wrote a letter back home. None of this stuff that I had asked to be done was done. So they're going out there. Okay, what did I find? 1966, February 18th and 24th, testimony from the man who inspected the ship. And as I'm reading through it, and it's kind of like, Yeah, that looks good. Okay, here's your certificate and away you go. Okay. Friend of mine, I found 4 crew members of the ship who are still alive, who were on it when it sank. One of them testified that he went down into the ballast tanks, and for those who might not be real familiar with ships, the ballast tanks are kind of on the side and around near the bottom of the ship. And if you don't have a full cargo, putting you down into the water, they fill those with water so the ship rides a little lower when you're empty, and then they'll empty them when the cargo goes in. He was asked by the captain to go into these ballast tanks with a bucket of white paint and paint around any rivets that were loose. You know why he couldn't do it? Because when he put the paint on, the water that was coming in faster than they could pump it out was washing the paint off. Okay, these are things that nobody knows. That's why I've been doing all this research. It's pretty obvious that that ship wasn't very seaworthy at the time that it went down, and a lot of things were swept under the rug. But if you read any ship historical types of things, it was not uncommon for shipping companies to keep sending those ships out, regardless of their condition, forcing them to go. It wasn't even supposed to sail on this trip. It was supposed to end its season the year before, or the month before, this trip before. Another ship broke down. I found out what that ship was, found a crew member from it. He told me what happened. The shipping company, Bethlehem Steel, called the morale and said, hey, you've got to go pick up another load in Taconite Harbor, Minnesota. So off they went. Should have never even happened.
Wow. That's insane.
So that's why we're doing this, to give some closure to these families. I was in Paynesville, Ohio, which is near Cleveland. I'm sitting in a room with a 99, a 90-year-old, 2 women, sisters to one of the crew, and 3 75-year-old cousins. And while you're talking about good memories, inevitably 53 years later there's still tears, because I had more answers for them than what the shipping company, the Coast Guard, or anybody else gave them. And at the end of all this, when the exhibit opens, there will be a big gala dinner or whatever it is, and anybody who's involved, I'll send something to Jessica so she knows about it, but anybody's going to be able to come to that and see what's going on and meet some of these people. And like the 90-year-old lady from Paynesville, she called me the other day and she's like, well, 2020, I'm not getting any younger. You got to get this.
Working on it.
Yeah. It's neat. You make a lot of friends in this too.
Did it break in half?
Yeah, it did, between number 10 and 11 hatch. And I'm glad you bring that up, because it's another interesting point. And I don't want to bore you with all this. Kick me out anytime you want. When the ship sank, it broke in half, roughly evenly. It's in roughly 200 feet of water. But here's the mystery. The bow and the stern are over 5 miles apart on the lake floor. In Dennis's book, he talks about how the bow went down at 2 a.m. in the morning. And the stern was almost ramming the bow for a little while, and then basically went off into the sunset. Okay? We truly believe, and we have proof, and we're doing a dive on the ship this summer with some National Geographic divers, specifically on the stern. We believe that the crew on the stern, the 17 men who were on the stern, actually attempted to sail the stern to shore to save themselves. One of the divers, his name is Mike Fletcher. If you watch National Geographic, you may see him on there.
It sounds familiar.
He went down, and he's like taking pictures. He's got this big thing. It makes him look like a spider. It's got all sorts of cameras and lights on it and so forth. It's really
So
cool. He goes down there. He's even got like I call it a jetpack, but he doesn't have to swim. He just kind of propels him through the water when he's down below. He brought me a picture. He's like, take a look at this. And I'm like, whoa. If you know about ships, bulkheads, like between cargo holds, divisions between the holds, have what's called a watertight door. It's kind of like a long oval rectangle shape. Usually when the ship is going along, it's open, so you can go between passageways. It's only closed because there's water coming in. Well, you probably wouldn't take time to stuff rags around a watertight door and try to slam it shut unless you had a problem.
That's interesting.
So that's one clue that we have. I can guarantee you that that stern floated at least 90 minutes, if not longer, because we know the bow went down at 2 o'clock because Dennis was there. I often think about if he didn't survive, we wouldn't know any of this
That's
stuff.
true.
That's why the family should have never been angry at him. They never would have known anything about their loved ones. Secondly, though, in the galley, which is also in the stern, the galleys where the crew would get together and eat their dinners and things like that, there was a clock that another diver, Dave Trotter, found. 3:30. Okay. Clock just like that one up on the wall, your basic $10 Walmart clock. Okay. Well, either the power went out at 3:30 or it sank and the clock stopped at 3:30. We're not sure which. If it was the first one, it might have been, you know, up even longer. So one of our goals is to find some other clocks when we do a dive. The problem now is zebra mussels and quagga mussels are just caked on many, many things, and if you try to brush them off, you create silt and your vision goes down and you can't take pictures and what have you. So we know it was up for at least 90 minutes, if not longer. And the ship is only maybe 15, 20 miles from shore. But the other thing we're doing is we're taking and putting the weather charts from that time and identifying where bodies were found, where wreckage was found. That's all found over here is what we've determined. But the stern is over here. Okay, weather patterns would indicate that if, you know, this went that way, everything should go that way, and that didn't happen. And actually, Steve Balon from Channel 2 is helping us reconstruct the storm on different overlays so we can kind of prove what went where and
Super
what
geeky
happened.
about
So
that.
there's a lot going on with this, and you really have to research, yeah.
How many lifeboats were there?
There's 2 lifeboats and 2 rafts. The raft, one is up between the hatches, right about here. Matter of fact, there is a photo,
Isn't
color
there
one, the
one?
color one, yeah.
This one?
No, it
No.
shows the whole deck, the one that they're
Oh,
standing
it
on the
was
Mackinac Bridge.
more. I think it's in the other folder. Let me try. Was it this one? Or is that no? No, I think it's in.
You'll see the whole deck. The ship is kind of going like this, and like you're standing up above it. This type of, well, we can use that one, sure, okay. We'll use this one. This is the Lehigh. This is the ship that broke down that the Morel went to take that other load. Between hatches 2 and 3 here is where the life raft was that Dennis was on. The aft raft is right behind the stack, and you can see the davits here that hold one lifeboat, and then the other one is right over here. So there's 2 lifeboats. Neither lifeboat was launched. They're both on the ground or on the floor of Lake Huron now. Captains from other ships that were in the storm at the time testify that the conditions were so bad there would have been no way to launch a lifeboat. The rafts are designed to float off. Dennis's raft had most of the people on from the pilot house and the front cabins on it, but when the bow went down, it tilted sideways, the raft slid off, overturned, and all the people who were on the raft went into the drink, and only 4 of them were able to get back to the raft. I would like to find out more about what happened to this one. And again, my theory at this point, based on what we know, I can almost guarantee you that at some point the guys on that stern figured, you know, darn it, we're not going to make it, we got to get off of here. And that they were all on that raft waiting for it to float off. But that stern would almost have to sink perfectly for it to just float off because the lifeboats are next to that raft, up on top of the aft cabins. And some of the guys from the aft were found missing feet, badly injured, very bruised. My guess is that when that raft came off in the storm, something happened that overturned that raft as well, because when they found it a little bit further north of the other raft, nobody was on it, and there was one man stuck underneath that raft. So some sort of calamity occurred between the time it left the ship and actually got in the water, because realistically, if they couldn't get into the lifeboats, they had to get on that raft, and we know that with a guy being stuck under the raft, that there were people on it. It's just what happened between A and B.
Yeah. Holy cow. That's insane. So I'm pretty pumped for this project. This will be kind of a cool project.
We have a private investigator working with us. His name's Kevin Rogers. He's from Shawano. And because these people who are relatives and so forth are so old, this is an interesting thing. If you ever get involved doing research, and I'm guessing some of you probably will. Anybody used Ancestry.com for anything? Okay. If you're looking for your grandfather, great-grandfather, people like that going backwards, that's the easy part. That's not what I'm doing. I'm going the other way because I need to find grandsons, granddaughters, nephews, nieces, things like that who were related to the guys who were on the ship. The problem is, by law, all of us can only get access to the census and information like that 72 years old and older. So we only have access to the 1940 census. Well, I know who these guys were. I know who their wives or next of kin were. I have to put the pieces together the other day, and that other way. And that's the hard part of this. So again, going to libraries, doing research, trying to find obituaries that list next of kin. And well, if it's daughters, okay, maybe they've gotten married. The last name has changed.
Yep.
You know, it's a needle in a haystack. But if you know a police officer or a private investigator, they can get a lot of information that you and I can't.
They really can.
So I talked to this fellow because 3 of his kids are in the Navy, and they're very interested in ships, of course. So I gave him a list. We met, and a day later, he's like, hey, try these 2 numbers for this person. Second number, bang, hit it. I called the person, left a message. Then all of a sudden I hear the phone rattling, and they pick it up, and it's this older lady, and she's like, oh yeah, that's us. Yeah, tell me more, tell me more. And you know, all of a sudden we're on the phone for an hour, and then the next day we did an interview where I just kind of parked my recorder next to the phone and you know, get their information and testimony. So that's the hard part, finding the people. But when you find them, the stories they tell you, some of it's just fascinating. And then the X-rated stories about their son or grandson or whatever when they're on the ship, those are very interesting
Oh,
too.
I'm sure. Oh my
We'll
goodness.
make good fodder for the book.
Yeah, no kidding. That's going to be interesting. Man.
Some of those sailors led a rough life. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Holy cow. So yeah, so that's kind of, oh, that might be the, oh no, that's a different one.
29. Typically they have 32. I'm actually going up to Bayfield, Wisconsin in a couple of weeks. There's a man up there, I shouldn't say man, his daughter. The man's name was Hajalmer Edwards. He was one of the porters, I believe, on the ship. On the trip down to unload, they always unloaded their ore at the Bethlehem Steel Plant near Buffalo. And then they headed back, and that's when they sank. On the way down, he got off at the Sioux Locks because he was so sick that they took the bosun's chair and just put him over the side and dropped him off, and they took him to the hospital up at the Sioux. And so he actually, technically, survived the wreck because he was not on the ship. But as I go around and go to all these different newspapers and get details, it's amazing the number of papers who listed, you know, half a dozen other crew members who died but were never on the ship because they were actually short 2 or 3 crew members on the trip. And they have a minimum number that they could actually sail with, and I think the minimum was like 26 or 27, but they could go, and so they did. But typically they would carry like 32 or 33.
Huh. Wow.
But yeah, I'm going to meet with his daughter and get some information from her. And one of the crew members, also from Duluth, matter of fact, this George Dahl that we pointed out, trying to find his relatives. His wife passed away, and all the stress and so forth, both of his kids committed suicide. Okay, that makes it a little more difficult to find anybody because there's no immediate descendants. So you have to hope to find, you know, go this way as opposed to this way. Find, you know, brothers and sisters of the, you know, George and his wife, and see if any of their kids are around and if they have any memories or pictures or things like that. So it can be a real challenge.
That's crazy. Yeah, there's some bigger ones of these same things.
Those pictures are from 1931.
That's nuts.
There's
Those
some.
are the smaller ones.
Yeah.
There's the bigger one in here somewhere.
Ooh, click this one up. This series. Here, we'll start here. The ship that's up here is the Michipicoten. This is interesting. There's a series of pictures that show the Michipicoten breaking apart and sinking.
Oh, yeah, look.
The Edward Y. Townsend was the sister ship to the Morel. When I say sister ship, built from the same plans in Superior, Wisconsin, at a shipyard there. All three of these ships, the Morel, the Townsend, and the Michipicoten. The Michipicoten was built in the same shipyard as the Morel, 1905, a year earlier. As you can see in these pictures, let's start again. Okay. Oh, wow, you're fancy.
We try.
I see. All right. It's being towed for scrap to Spain in 1972. See what's happening here?
Yeah,
the hull is starting to fail.
It. It's crazy.
Okay.
Right there.
Okay, you can see the crack.
Wow.
And you can see it breaking apart here. Now you have total separation and total separation here, and you see the bow going down very quickly. What I want you to keep in mind, though, is this picture here. You see this, the support wires for the stack. There's another one, I think, right after this.
Oh, one more
I
after
think
that?
there's one more, yeah. Oh, forget it. It's right here. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Right here, you see this wire?
Yes.
That's what this is. This picture is taken on the stern. There's crew on this ship as it's sinking. They always put 3 crew members on a dead vessel to kind of guide it along, even though it's being towed by a tug. There's crew members on this ship taking the pictures as the bow is sinking. The bow sank in about 15 minutes. The stern stayed afloat for a day.
Oh.
Remember we talked about, we thought the Morel stern floated? Okay. The other ship, the sister ship, the Edward Townsend, was in the same storm as the Morel on the same lake, going to the same place, built at the same time in 1906. Got to the Sioux Locks. They find out, because their captain for a while was talking to the Morel captain on the radio, telling him I'm dead. They get to the Sioux Locks. They're pulled over at the Sioux by the Coast Guard. And guess what? An 18-inch wide crack in the deck in the exact same place as where the Morel broke apart and the Michipicoten broke apart. The ship never sailed again. The Townsend was towed to Spain for scrapping, and the exact same thing happened off Newfoundland in the Atlantic Ocean, not very far from where the Titanic sank. All 3 ships break apart, same place.
Same place.
Think there might be a weakness in design?
You would have guessed
Okay.
that after the first
You see
one.
why we're doing this project? All these things coming together? Okay.
Holy cow.
But this is, if you would have been out there on the Morel on that night, like Dennis was, that's what you would have seen.
Oh, there's
How
one
deep
more.
are
Look at that.
at the boat? How deep? You say that you're doing so dive.
Yeah, the stern of the boat is about 220 feet of water. The bow is a little higher, about 180. If you dive on it, you need it's called mixed gases, and you can stay down for basically until you run out. But you have to do decompression on the way back up.
I do some diving.
Oh,
I never
you know
go
that.
that far,
Okay.
like I
Okay.
dive.
And it takes you about 2 hours of decompression before you can come back out of the water.
Holy cow.
Otherwise, you get what's known as the bends.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I can't wait to tell our IT instructor who dives
Ah.
all this stuff later today.
Must have to use some like hefty housing for that if they're taking cameras down there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
Oh, yeah.
It's a cool safety house.
Yeah.
If you go to find a ship and you take, we call it towing the fish, you got the sonar and this little thing that you tow behind the boat. It's $1 million piece of equipment. And when you're towing it, like if it's called mowing the lawn because you're going back and forth trying to find a wreck. But when you turn the boat, you have to turn it in like a light bulb shape. You can't just do like, turn it around
Yeah,
on the
it's not
road.
a
Because
180.
you have to keep the cable between that sonar and camera device taut. Because if not,
Yep.
down it goes,
That
and you just
makes
lost
sense.
$1 million piece of equipment.
Whoops.
Whoops.
That's a
And
big
whoops
whoops.
has happened.
it's a big whoops.
That's not a cheap whoops.
Yeah, that has happened.
Oh my goodness.
It's amazing the number of things you find, the people you meet. I was just doing some research online one night and found a listing for a man in near Indianapolis. He had the original logbooks from when the ship was built in 1906. We believe his great-grandfather was the first captain. And I went down there to meet with him. Come to find out, his great-grandfather captained 4 ships that all sank. He wasn't on them when they sank, of course. And he has 75 cases of shipwreck artifacts from all these ships.
Whoa.
He asked me if I could help him determine the lineage of his grandfather and what he did and so forth. And then he's going to donate all these artifacts to a museum, which is interesting because the next ship that this museum wants to put a display on was one that his grandfather was a captain of. And there's things from logbooks and crew records to Christmas cards. The ships made their own Christmas cards, sent them out to businesses they did business with, and all this stuff. And if it wouldn't have been for just searching around for stuff, one thing kind of leads to another. And that's what I enjoy about this. This is the things you find, the people you meet. It's just really, really neat. Yeah.
That's so cool. Any other questions? Okay, so we'll start this next week. I just wanted John to come this week to kind of introduce that project so that you have that in the back of your head as we start talking about that next week. And then over the next few weeks, we'll be working on these pictures and stuff like that. So we're going to change up what we typically do for retouching, and we're going to work on all these images, which will be fun.
And unless some of you don't want to be, which is fine, but if you want to make a list of your names and things, we certainly credit you in the exhibit and book and so forth as well.
Cool.
Thank you.
Then you got something you can show a future employer or something.
Exactly. Exactly. It'll be very exciting to do. Well, John, thank you very much for coming in and explaining that project.
All right, I'll get out of your hair so you can
And
all get through it.
and we will be going through these images.
All right.
I just like looking through them. There's the coolest things in here.
Dennis on his 27th birthday. This is January of
Is him.
67, right after the, less than 2 months after the wreck.
That is him. Holy cow. Man.
I had a laugh because I was I found a crew member actually of the ship in Manitowoc of all places. Went to, because he's a little guy, he makes us all look like giants. But come to find out that Dennis used to pick on him. And I guess at some point they had a phone call and Dennis apologized to him for being mean to him.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So, if he was still around, hey Dennis, I hear you were a bully. I told his wife about that and she goes, yeah, I can see him doing that.
Oh my goodness. I love it.
He was married 5 times. He had his,
really?
he had his,
Wow.
should I give him one good X-rated story? Yes. Okay.
She really wants to say yes, but you know.
But these are the things, in a way, this is the things that make it real.
And then you're going to be like,
Yeah.
you can stop now?
Yeah. We talked about PTSD, and you can imagine after going through an experience like this, what your mind is for a while, and what have you. He has a friend, Harvey Hayes, lives in Erie, Pennsylvania, and Harvey was actually the guy who went in the hole and was painting around those, or Dallas Hayes was painting around those rivets. Well, anyway, Dennis turned to drugs for a while. And like I said, his marriages and things failed and what have you until he kind of straightened himself out. And that's what the speaking did, where he would go all over the place and speak about his ordeal starting in 82, and then he really accelerated after that. So I'm talking to Harvey, and I said, give me a good Dennis story. He's like, okay. Well, he had just started speaking, and he had gone up to Sault Ste. Marie. This is, maybe 83, 84, something like that. And Dennis calls up Harvey. He's half-baked. Oh, I was seeing red lights in the car, red lights in my rearview mirror, and, I was smoking a doobie, and so I ate it. It was an ambulance.
Oh my God.
And he's like, I don't know what to do now. And Harvey's like, well, maybe you just ought to, sit on the side of the road and detox a little bit. He thought it was a cop coming to get him, so he ate his weed.
Maybe follow the ambulance.
Yeah. But it's stories like this that you hear, from families and so forth that really put a human touch on the whole thing, because, try to put yourself. I've tried to put myself in that situation, thinking about what I would have done. You have to deal with this all your life. He had, I don't know how many operations because of frostbite on his feet and
Oh, I'm sure.
yeah, things like that. And, you know, who knows what we would have done.
Yeah.
But that human interest part of this is the neat part.
Did he lose like any fingers or toes or anything from being out in the
He
cold?
lost several toes and half of his left foot. No fingers though.
Oh.
Yeah. Actually, he spent time.
Probably
when he-
easier to keep your fingers warm, you know.
Yeah, and he was doing this
Oh, yeah.
and some other things which are talked about in the book too.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it was mostly leg feet types of things. His doctor at the Harbor Beach Hospital, when they flew him in by helicopter. Here's another thing I found. Okay, if you get good at this, you want to touch up some video. I have video footage of the rescue.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yes. And when last time I went to Michigan, I found a man who's 99 years old, who is their unofficial town historian, Leonard Dufresne. And I showed him this because everybody said it was his video footage going up and down the beach with a 16-millimeter camera on his shoulder. It wasn't his footage. So there's other footage floating around out there. Okay? But now I lost my train of thought. You get me thinking about things here. I could talk about this forever because there's so much stuff that I've uncovered. But you know, I'm sitting in this room with this 99-year-old man, and he's recounting this stuff, and he borrows me a big folder of, you know, stuff that he's collected. So.
And I
Yeah.
did talk to one of our digital media instructors, and he said he would look at the video to see if
Yeah,
it's
I
something
should
they
have
might
brought
be
that
able to,
along, but I
but,
didn't. Yeah.
eh.
So we're hoping to find the other video footage of this because that'd be something neat to add to the exhibit as well. Sorry if I got off track. But
No. These are interesting stories. So, yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Seriously, I didn't think about this. The more we talk about it, the more exciting it is.
it is, yeah, it is. And I'm curious to see the final product myself when this is all done.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm doing it because I enjoy it and because I had a friend who was, you know, the key figure in it, and I'm still friends with his wife. But it's about the 29 men and their families more than anything. And I hope that when this is all done, it's something that they can look at and be proud of and know that, you know, after 53 years, their loved ones are remembered, like those of Fitzgerald and Bradley and, you know, a few others, instead of being just lost in the shuffle.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so much for coming in.
Yeah, I need something
Good to
know
see
where
you
find
again.
me.
Yes,
All right.
exactly.
All right.
You found your way
Thanks.
down here, so
Oh, yeah.
I'm assuming you.
My GPS is still works.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gus. So we will have all of that stuff next week. I do have a couple of extra ones oddly at the same time all these people are asking to restore photos. So this is this is the photo from the I think 1, 2, 3, 4, or no, did he say left or right? He said left. I think this is the grandfather of one of our maintenance guys. So he just found this when they were cleaning out the house, and he's like, I don't know what shape this photo's in, but I'm wondering if you can do something. I said, well, oddly enough, we're doing a whole bunch of that. So he brought this in to me. I haven't taken it out yet, but I don't think it's attached to the glass. It actually looks like it's in excellent shape. I honestly don't think there's going to be much to do to it, except for maybe just digitize it. And then I have one more photo, and I must have it in the folder in my office, but one of our trades instructors is, I think his name is Jim, is retiring this year, and so he has a photo of him that he would like digitized, and it is faded, so we would need to add some contrast back in, but so that they can do something. I don't remember what he said now, what they're going to do with that. They're just going to blow it up and torture him or something like that, I'm not sure. But I have one of those too. So this one's too big to fit on the scanner, so we'll probably end up just photographing this and then cleaning it up. But the other one's just a little one, so that one we can probably stick on the scanner.
Can we just scan half of it at a time?
We can, yep, we can do that. So we can actually try it both ways and see what happens with it. Yep, because it would work either way. This one would be easy enough to stitch up actually.
How many files are from the road?
There is a ton. One folder this one has 118. Oops, go back here.
how many?
These, I don't think we need any of these because these are the original scans of the newspaper that I think he had cropped in a lot of these, but there are some, and I don't know how much we're going to be able to get from these newspaper scans, but I grabbed them anyway, just in case. So there's 70 in this folder. And again, some of these are duplicates. So yeah, so there's a couple hundred. There's 40 in this one, 118 in that one, 77 in that one, and then some newspaper clippings, just over a dozen newspaper clippings. So there's a lot.
How are we distributing these for students?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. I was thinking of just dividing them all up amongst everyone in class, and kind of take it from there. I think that's probably going to be the easiest with the amount that we have, is go through, find the duplicates, take out the duplicates, and then divide the remaining ones between everybody. I'm assuming is going to be the easiest. They're honestly, for the most part, in decent shape. There's little things, you know, like cleaning up some of this stuff, things like that. So there's some. He invested probably about a third of the way through in a high-end scanner, or a new scanner that allowed him to scan. Like, these are pretty decent sizes here. If I can get in here. So at, whoops, resample. I mean, I guess they are a little bit smaller, but we still got a 3.5 by 2.5 image at a 300 resolution, enough that we'd be able to blow that up just a little bit more. So even at a higher resolution, they should still be okay. But we'll try, and I think the hardest ones are going to be the newspaper scan. Like, even this one has a bit of a pattern to it. I mean, it's kind of, we'll see if we can remove some of that.
And what size? What size do you want? Like a 5/7?
Well, see, that's what I asked him, and he didn't necessarily have a direct answer for that, because some will, they'll just try and blow some of them up for the book. The screen resolution's the big thing. Yeah, so I guess it's going to be as best as we can get it, and then what will end up happening is there'll probably be a batch run to make them all 72 PPIs for screen resolution, and then 300 for print and things like that. So I don't think we're necessarily going to worry too much about changing the resolution or cropping in anything, as much as we're just going to try and clean it all up. So there'll be some patterns that we have to deal with, especially the newspaper ones. And there are some techniques, and I'll pull some of that. Well, that's actually not one. That's a good one. Some of these are small. These are the ones I'm slightly concerned about. Because they're 1.4 by 0.82 at 100. So they're itty bitty. So there's a couple in there that I'm going to have to probably ask him to see if he can rescan it, because he has a scanner. If he can just rescan them or what. Yeah, because I'm thinking these were from the original scans he did, and then he went and got the other scanner that has a better resolution. But you can see this one's from paper because it's got, you can see the texture that's in it. So there's some techniques where we have to do a little bit of blur, a little bit of sharpening, a little bit of blur, a little bit of sharpening, and just go back and forth until we can remove as much of the pattern as possible. So I'm digging up some of those tutorials that I've had in the past, or just finding reference links that use the same techniques, so that we have all those in addition to some of the things that come out of the book, obviously. So yeah, that's gonna be our plan. I'm excited.
Can we have access to these after they're all edited?
I was gonna ask him that. I forgot to ask him that. I would assume that you would have access, like as a portfolio piece type of a deal, but I will double check with him. Exactly. Yeah, but I will definitely double check with him. He just brought me this book today, so I'm curious. That's very interesting. I don't know that there's any pictures. Oh, there are some pictures in here. There are some pictures in here. That's interesting. So there's pictures in this book, too. I know, that's what I'm wondering. There's documents in the back, too. I'm sure he probably has. Or if he was friends with them. It's even autographed in 2015. Because he's obviously not around anymore. So yes, and then we have those few people that are taking it as independent studies, so we have images that will pass along to those two people also. So there's a couple more people that aren't even here on a regular basis that we have to help out with the project too.
I think that there are enough for more than the people.
Yes, there's more than enough photos. I'm not worried about that. This is the most interesting one, and maybe everyone just gets a copy of that one, and we'll see who can clean it up the best.
The most fun.
Was he saying that those people were alive with him and they died on the raft? And he
He's
just
treated, one alive.
Yeah, no, they were dead on the raft. I don't know.
time?
That's what I don't know. He didn't say that, but he definitely was the only one alive at some point
I
and
thought
used
that he
them
said,
to
like,
cover up.
maybe they got on the raft, but like either died of the cold or something.
And they could have. They could have. He didn't necessarily say.
He just kept them.
Yeah. So he
Or pulled them out of the water, but they
Yeah.
yeah, that's true
Maybe try
too.
to help them.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
there's
Sounds
guys on here so I can
That's-
stay warm.
Yeah, exactly.
I have another question.
Mhm.
There was a video of him being rescued. Is this the same type of video right now?
It would be this rescue. Yeah, there is a video of it. He was actually going to bring it today and he forgot, and I forgot to remind him.
Would that be easier to see whether there were people on top or?
And that's, yeah, and he said it needs to be restored. He said it's pretty rough.
Yeah,
So
it's not even better.
yeah, so it would need to have some restoration done to it. So he had asked about that. So I asked one of our video instructors if, I mean, it probably wouldn't be something that the class would be able to do during the semester, but if he would look at it at least to see if it's in a format that we could attempt to clean it up. But I don't know. We'll see. He said he has it on a USB. So eventually I'll get my hands on that to see. But it was interesting that everyone thought it was this one guy that did the video, and it turns out it wasn't his video. And who knows, because he's like 99 years old, so maybe he thinks it's not his and it is his, or it really isn't his. So it's interesting. So that's going to be fun. So now, okay, so with the time we have left, first I wanted to see, there were a few questions on the midterm stuff. It should just be those 3 images. If you have the, well, it would be 5 files if you have the XMPs instead of DNGs. If you have the step-by-step sheet, just make sure that I get that at some point.
Question.
Yeah.
So I ended up losing mine.
Oh, yeah.
So I literally just used like a picture of the sheet that had the step-by-step instructions. So like I
Oh.
actually don't have the sheet.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, he didn't have mine. I don't know where it's from.
I'm probably already gonna get deduction points on the project anyway.
No, I feel
I don't know. Yeah, no, I don't know what
Yeah, I
happened
got
with. Maybe I lost it. But so I asked Natalie for the file.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know where it was.
I have that sheet that I
Maybe
grabbed
it's
up.
inside
yeah.
one book.
It's in my locker.
At some point, I'll just-
inside one book.
That's not a problem.
Maybe it's in the.
So now I think there was a question or two in regards to that that I just want to make sure I cover.
Yeah. Like a day after. I tossed mine in my recycle bin because I did not know either. I don't want a dumpster
The
dive.
hardest part of the assignment.
Dumpster dives.
Oh.
No, and it's okay if it's written on, it doesn't matter.
Oh, I
It
have
doesn't necessarily matter.
What do you want us to do if we don't have it then?
No, it's not the end of the world, I just try and collect them back because I change it each semester.
The
Oh.
hardest part of the midterm was turning in that sheet.
Turning in the paper, I know.
Folding out that piece of paper.
Now, I think someone said there was a question or two about that. Was there? I want to make sure I address any of that stuff. I went through some of the written pieces as they came through just to double check. That everything went through correctly, all that good stuff.
So here's this back,
Oh,
and
and
then
that's
this is
the,
for.
oh, perfect. I like
class
patterns.
was.
Yes, I have that pile over here. So then, what we're going to do this week is we are going to talk about presets with whatever time we have left and what we can do with presets. So I'm going to simplify it just a little bit because there's a ton to talk about with presets. But the goal of what we're doing is just finding ways to take less time to get the things done in Photoshop. And we'll talk about automation, which is another way to speed up some of our process when we do editing. And automation would be like running an action where you hit the play button and Photoshop automatically runs a series of steps for you. And all you have to do is wait till it's done. So we'll be talking about that. That one is something we'll talk about as one of our last topics, new topics this semester, so that will come. But something that kind of goes hand in hand with that is presets. And we did that in Camera Raw. So we opened up a file in Raw and you've done some edits. This is from chapter 2, so this is a while ago if you remember. And there was a preset tab in there where you could save some of your edits, like if you did a cool black and white adjustment in Raw and you wanted to save that, and you saved that preset. That's basically what we're doing in Photoshop, but we can do it with curves, we can do it with levels, we can do it with tools like the crop tool, so that we're not constantly recreating an S-curve or anything like that, where it's just drop down box, click it, and it does exactly what it has to do. So like on the midterm, when we had the picture of the girl and you had to mimic those curves adjustments, if that's something that you want to save to use in other images, oops, can't type and talk at the same time. Here's hoping my name is selected because I'm not checking. There we go. Editing, midterm. I just need, where did I put, there it is. I'm gonna stick this in Photoshop here. So when you got to the point where you were doing that curves adjustment and you had to pretty much match that, and then in the RGB, draw the curves, oops, that's 3, 4, and 5. So yeah, so it's just a roughed up picture. Oh, those are pretty close. It's just a roughed up picture where you are trying to recreate this and get pretty close to that. So if this is a setting that you're like, wow, that curves, it does something really cool with the photo for something I want to use over and over, you can create presets of this stuff. So certain adjustments have the ability to save a preset, but I'm going to tell you that some do not, and some that I wish did do not, like a brightness contrast or a vibration saturation adjustment layer. They don't have that in there. But curves and levels and the black and white adjustment, trying to think of a few more off the top of my head. Those have preset capabilities in it. So where you have those and where you do a lot of stuff, whoops, utilize that. So I just want to show you how to save those. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it would kind of be like an extra step, and you might have to like really save, like know where to, if you have to save it to a photo, can't you just like go to, before you do like the brightness and vibrance, just go to camera raw filter and save the...
Yes. So yeah, if it's something like that, like a brightness contrast, you could potentially just do it as a preset in RAW, open that file in RAW first, click that preset, bring it back to Photoshop, and then do the rest of your presets.
Can't you do it like when you get ready, you're in the editing, you're ready editing, can't you go back to camera?
Yes.
And save it as another preset?
That image, if you opened it in RAW first, then just open it as an object so that you can always go back to Camera Raw. If it wasn't in RAW first, you can make that background a smart object and then use the Camera Raw filter and go in that way and actually do those raw adjustments and then utilize any of those. There's your presets. The snapshots are what's not available, but the presets would be there. So yeah, you could select something like that and stick it in there.
then like, you know those 3 bars right here?
The
Look.
3.
Alright, I'm gonna go back to it.
Me too.
Right here, you can like.
Oh, yes. Yep. That's another place where you can save it too. So if you're in here in Camera Raw, there is an option to save your settings, and it would save that. Now the difference is it's not going to be a preset in Camera Raw, but it would save it as a file, like an XMP type of a file that you could then put anywhere. In Raw, you could actually put them in Lightroom, and it should transfer. So yeah, so you can also do it that way. But yep, it would save it. It would save it from there also. But if you don't have that luxury of using Raw, or for example, with the curves, the tone curve only gives you some limitations where you might have to do it in Photoshop, or you wanted to use levels or whatever it may be. There are, where you see an adjustment with a drop-down preset, you'll see it says preset right here, and you drop down, there are some built in already. Like I love the linear contrast, I use that constantly. You can save it inside there, your own, and it will show up in that list.
Just found something else. If you go in the preset menu, you
Yep.
got this part. You
Yep.
can do preset.
Yep, that's what we did in chapter 2.
Oh, I was gonna say, but like, this is not a raw.
Is my
file.
doggy? So
That's okay, because it's in Camera Raw, and it's saving those settings as a preset for future Raw uses.
That's what I was talking
Yes.
about. with the back.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Is it editing class related? Because I have a lot to get through in a half hour. Okay, that I can't do right now. I'm in the middle of this class. That's a different class. So to save this, to save these presets, and you have to do this for an assignment, so I highly recommend you pay attention, because if you don't, I ain't repeating it. And I know you guys don't always watch these videos because they're so entertaining. There are, just like Robinson just pointed out in Camera Raw, it's the same thing. There are these 4 little lines to the upper right of the Properties panel that if you drop down, you'll see it says Save Curves Preset. And then you can save it. Now it's going to default, if you look, this is where they're hidden if you've ever wondered where it all is. It's under User, under a hidden library folder that you can't see just by digging in the computer. Application Support, Adobe, Photoshop 19, Presets, and then the one specific for curves. Super easy to find.
Can you like make a new folder of that, like somewhere else and save them to?
Yes, I'm going to show you how to save them out, because you are actually going to do that for your assignment. So there is a way to save them out and make that a little bit easier. Now I would leave them in the default folder so that they automatically show up on the computer you're working on. But should you need to transfer that, then you would do the saving technique that I'll show you. So it has a folder for every adjustment tool, whatever, that can have a preset attached to it. And just leave it at that default, but then give it a title. So I'll just call this Vintage Curves, because that's kind of what the effect does. And then I hit save. Now what's cool, it's these 4 little, it's this flyout menu to the right is where you find the save. Oh yeah, yep, not in Camera Raw. We're in Photoshop, because we did the presets in Camera Raw already. So we're just going to talk about the Photoshop specific ones.
So we save it here in the first, in the
Yeah, whatever the default is that pops up. Yep, just leave it there, just give it a title, and then it's good. Yep.
So speaking of saving presets and stuff, in the assignment, in the first thing, you have, save 5 of each of the following, and then 1 single preset for each. But
Yes.
you have 7 presets, but there should only be.
But there is, so it's, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Let me get to, let's see, editing, materials. There we go. So what you are doing, so this is the brush preset, and then there's 5 adjustments, and then tools. But when you submit it, these tool presets will save as one file, and the brush presets will save as one file, so all 5 are contained in the one file. But adjustment presets, when we save those out, it doesn't let us save it as one file. They're individual files. So you'll have the 5 individual for that, one containing all 5 of these, and one containing all 5 of those. So yeah, you'll only have 7 files to submit when you're done, but that 15 total. Yeah.
The assignment isn't.
Yeah, where is the assignment?
Oh, you might have to refresh it. It was, oh wait.
I just did it and it's still,
Oh yeah, it isn't open. Oh yeah, it's not open till 10:30. Why 10:30? Let's open that now.
He wants to, he knows how.
Wait till class is over before I show anyone anything. There we go. You just have to refresh it and it should be good now. So that's how you save the adjustment. Any type of adjustment is what is this little flyout menu. So if I were to attach, let's say I try to do a color balance. This is what bothers me the most. I wish color balance had saved presets. It drives me nuts that I can't save a preset for color balance because there's no preset drop-down menu. Because there are so many techniques where it's like I'm dragging the midtones to add more cyan and blue, and then the highlights I'm trying to add more yellow, and then in the shadows I'm trying to add magenta. And I can't click a button and make that happen when in terms of a preset. So I would actually have to record an action to make that happen. So I don't know why certain adjustments don't have the ability to save presets, and that bugs me. But you will very quickly find out if it doesn't. But there are a good handful that do. Curves will do that. Levels have presets that you can add to. The black and white adjustment panel has ones that you can add to, which is really cool. So you can have a maximum black, you can have a green filter, and it adds a lot of different things to it. So part of what you'll do in your assignment is I want you to think about certain adjustment layers that you use often, and maybe certain types of adjustments you find yourself adding a lot. Like maybe you do a lot of contrast stuff, or maybe you like matte finish on your images. There's a curves adjustment that creates that matte finish, which is kind of what you did in that midterm. That's kind of the matte finish, essentially, is what it's doing, with a little bit of color adjustment on top of it. But that adjustment of toning down the highlights and washing out some of the shadows is part of the matte finish. So you could save that as a matte curves adjustment.
Do you have any suggestion for the brush presets? Like a
Yes.
like a useful
Yes.
brush that we can use.
Yes, I will definitely show you that one in just a second. So that part of the assignment, I want you to create 5 of those. So, and they can be all in the same adjustment. So it could be 5 curves that you save. It could be 5 different ones, if there are even 5 different ones. There's one, channel mixer. What?
White and black have a...
Yep, it does.
Wow.
It does. There are some built in there, and then you can add to that. So what's really cool is the next time I open up any image, if I just pick, I don't know, recordings, no. Here, let me grab one of these pictures. A decent one that's big enough. Or not. I can go to the adjustment panel. Oh, it's in black and white. I wonder why I can't do anything. There we go. Let's go to curves. I can say, well, that adjustment's going to look awesome. So my vintage curves is going to do that to the picture. Sure did a whole lot of nothing. Whole lot of nothing. But now it's just a one-click thing. And what you'll see is you'll see these gray lines here separating the different sections. Like these are the pre-built ones or the defaults in Photoshop, and then the ones that show up in this next section are all the user ones that you have created. So they'll always go at the bottom. So now it's very easy. Again, it's only on this computer, but I will show you in a second how to save all of those out. Yeah. So that's the curves. I mean, not the curves. Those are the adjustment presets. So it's the flyout menu, and then you just save that preset. I think those will go quick. Again, just think of ones that you do often. Make this as usable as possible for you. I don't want these to not be usable. I really want you to be able to use these. Now, the other one is tool presets. I'm going to do the brush last. The tool presets is another one. These are really, really beneficial when it comes to, especially, and I always use cropping as the example, when you are getting ready to maybe send an image to get printed and it needs to be a certain size. And so you want to crop it to that size potentially, depending on what it is and how it's being printed. Let's say I want to save this as a 5x7 for print. And when I go to the crop tool, I have at the top here, I have to every single time type in my dimensions, and that gets annoying. But what I do need here, first of all, mine says ratio. I don't want ratio. It needs to be the exact height and width and a very specific resolution. So for what I would use it for, personally, would be printing. So I know that when I send it to my lab, I have to send my 5x7 as a, well, this is a horizontal, 7 by 5 inches, and then my lab requires 240 or 300. So I do 240 because it makes the file size smaller, and it prints exactly the same. So when I type those dimensions in, I get the boundary box of where I can position my image for cropping. But every time I do that, I have to retype the stinking information in. That's really annoying. So I have, why? Oh, because I'm in the boundary box here. Let me escape. There we go. I have, every tool has preset capabilities. So when you see the tool icon in the upper left corner, the little drop down arrow here, now these are all built into Photoshop already, just your basic 3x5, 4x6, all at 300 ppi. They're already in there. But you can add more. So the 300, that's great. They're already in there, but I like to do the 240 for my lab. So I might want to save a series of 240 ppi instead of 300. Creating tool presets are incredibly easy. Once you have all the settings for the tool set, you go under this drop-down arrow, and this little new layer icon that seems to be everywhere is how you create a tool preset. And then you just, what the other cool thing is it defaults to a lot of the settings that are in here so that I don't really have to do a whole lot there. And I can just hit OK and it adds it to the list. I am going to tell you, though, when you do this for your assignment, to keep your sanity and my sanity, put your initials at the beginning of the tool preset when you create it, because what you'll see when I show you how to export it is that it shows all the tool presets for all of Photoshop together. And it's damn near impossible to find yours unless you give them weird, funky names and stuff like that to make it easy to find. It becomes a headache. You will thank yourself when you go to save that, and I will thank you when I attempt to import all of them and grade them and try and find yours. So putting your initials at the beginning for the assignment is very important. Whatever you do for yourself, I don't care, but at least for the 5 presets for the assignment, make sure you just stick your initials or something at the beginning so you can tell that they're yours. But all you do is you give it a title, regardless of what you're doing it for. You hit OK and it shows up at the bottom of the list. So again, when I go to open another image, and let's say the next time I come in, I'm going to do this. Let's say the next time I come in, the last time I was doing something, I cropped a 3x5, and I'm like, nope, I need a I need a 5x7. I just click that, it does it, I adjust it, I crop it, and I'm done.
But this one, for example, you have like this preset for like you have like a 7x5, 10
Yes.
per 8, like a, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the horizontal. Yes. So
Okay.
what you can do is some people choose to save a preset for vertical and horizontal just so that it's one click. But if we're talking crop tool specifically, this will swap so that it will do vertical. So I find I like just having one preset of each because then I don't have to worry about swapping it. But it is very easy to do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's different when it's tons of pictures when it's only one.
Exactly, exactly. I guess it would be beneficial to have a vertical and a horizontal, so if you're batching a crop, you can open all the horizontals at once and just go crop, 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 and be done, and then do all the verticals, and then not worry about them, and do them probably quicker. So maybe it's beneficial to do one of each.
Yeah, how I think about it.
Oops, that's not what I meant to do. But each tool is going to have that. So think about tools that you use. Maybe, like for example, the, oh no, I'm not thinking the gradient tool. Which one am I thinking of? Some of the retouching tools. So maybe the spot healing brush, I have certain settings here. Like maybe I use a certain brush at a certain setting and a certain size all the time, which I'm on the wrong layer. There we go. So maybe I use the brush at a certain size with a certain amount of feathering, and I use content aware, I sample all layers, like I have whatever, or maybe I have a blend mode that I use too as I'm doing this. I can, once I get that set, I can save that in here, and this would be the spot healing brush, and I'll just call it retouch blank layer. So it's my setting for retouching on a blank layer, or if I'm using light and blend mode, it might actually not be blank layer, red skin. I often will retouch in a light and blend mode if there's a lot of red skin, blemishes, acne, stuff like that on the skin. Light and blend mode helps, which we'll talk about when we do retouching. But that's a good preset, and I hate switching between those modes and making all those changes, that I could save that so that the next time I come in, when it's set to whatever size and all of that stuff, I go right to here and then I'm set to go and I can just start retouching. You can see it's switched to light and blend mode and all that good stuff.
You can modify inside, like a filters inside, you can do a preset.
You can do some of those too. Are you talking
For
the...
example, like when you're trying to make like a liquify, is that like a preset for liquify?
I believe there are a few in there. Oops, blank layer. Let's do liquify. I'm sure you're going to want to rasterize. There are, I'm trying to think.
For the face.
I don't know.
Beautiful, but I was thinking.
I am not sure. Actually, no, I don't think you can. I thought maybe you could pull some of those, but no. Some definitely will have presets available in it, some of the filters. But yeah, that one does not. But I know there are some that will. So again, every tool has a preset. So just think about how you utilize each tool. Maybe in the type tool, maybe you put type on your pictures and you do compositions and you always use the same font at the same size with the same spacing, center aligned, I don't know. You can save all of those settings once you get them done as a type preset. And then all you got to do is click and start typing, and you don't have to set it every time.
You can like save your watermark,
Yes, that I would do as a brush. Oh, you could do that as type, but you could do it as a brush too. Yes, that would be a good candidate for a brush. So I'm hoping the tool presets make sense. I hate having to go through this so fast. But I want to make sure that I get all of it for you. But again, we'll have the recording. Anything extra I'll record. I might have to record a few extra things with the brush to show you, but we'll be okay. Are there anything about the tool presets that don't really make sense? The creation of them is just that drop down and new layer. So let me show you how to export that before I do anything else, in case I don't get through my brush stuff. When we want to export presets, tool presets and adjustment presets are done just slightly different. The tool presets that we just talked about, under the edit menu, you're going to find toward the bottom, you're going to find presets about 2/3 of the way down. And inside there is a preset manager and export import, which I hate that that's backwards. It bugs me to no end. Those are the two that we're going to use. The preset manager is where everything for the brushes and the tools. The adjustment ones, like curves, levels, that kind of stuff, that's all done through the export import preset menu. So let me show you that one first, and then I'll do the preset manager.
Didn't you tell us it kind of
I was, yeah.
having to it? Yeah.
Yeah. So the export import is kind of an interesting one. I guess I understand that it says export first because typically you make them and then you take them out of Photoshop. But I find most of us get things and bring them into Photoshop. So I don't know, but it bothers me that export comes first. I'm just a little OCD. That's what I was just gonna say. The only thing it has going for it is it's alphabetical. I had a student in digital media that said she was so OCD that the acronym drove her nuts because it needs to be CDO. And she would say it all the time. She's like, I'm so OCD that it bothers me that it's not CDO.
Oh my God.
Crack me up. So the adjustment presets, because they are all, did I really only save one? Okay, cancel. Let me save another one real quick so that I have two. This looks amazing.
They appear automatically?
Yes. Hideous. Black. I don't even think I spelled hideous right. No, I didn't. Whatever. Go with it. There's my hideous black and white preset. So, okay, now I'll go back and there'll be more than one. So in the export import preset, so edit presets, export import, you have to go to the export tab because you're taking ones out. And every one that you have created will show up in this list. I only have 2. You will have 5, 10, I don't know, but you'll turn in 5. So you'll need to choose 5. They will all show up there. So that makes this super easy because you don't have to go searching for them. Every single one will show up in here. So you'll see they all have different file extensions. And that's why in the assignment you'll see it says this will create 5 separate files. So you'll want to select the ones that you want to export. And unfortunately I can't do them all at once. But you can either double click to move it over here. Basically what you're doing is you have your pool of presets and you're choosing the ones that you want to export and move them over to this window. So I can either just use the arrow to move it over and say these are the ones I want you to export, or I just double click and it moves it over there automatically. I don't like that I can't select all of them and just move them over in one swift movement, but it's fairly quick. So whatever shows up over here is what will export. If you don't move anything over, you will get nothing and wonder why. So once you do that, you just hit export presets at the bottom right. And then you choose a spot to save it. It'll default to the last folder. Don't leave it there. You have to change that location. So I'll just save it on the desktop for now. So, and I'll create a folder real quick. But what it's going to do is it's going to create a different folder for every single preset. So it organizes it for you. You just have to pick the spot where it's going to go and hit open. And it takes a fraction of a second and it's done. And then when you look at it on the desktop, presets, you'll see an exported presets folder and then a folder for each one with each file in it. So easy, so
we
nice.
Start doing all the, like we can do all the file and then they come out.
Yep. So then if you wanted to do them here and then take them home and put them on your computer, when you get home, all you have to do is go to that same spot, presets, export, import, go to import, select the folder, there they are, and then it adds them all in there. So I don't have to dive into each one either. I just select the exported presets folder that it created with the organization. It recognizes that folder structure and it finds them. And then I just do the reverse. Pick the ones from that list that I want to import and import them, and then they're in Photoshop. So I'm just doing the same thing, just locating the folder instead of creating a folder. So it's very easy to move those presets. And I know through Creative Cloud, a lot of times you can have those transfer, so wherever you log in, they should show up. I haven't necessarily tried that yet to see if it's accurate, but you're supposed to be able to store all your presets on the cloud so that wherever you log in, it pulls from your cloud. So I'm hoping that makes sense. The other one where the tool presets are and the brush presets, which based on the fact that it's quarter after, I will have to record the brush presets for you. The preset manager, oh, like a snow, yeah, I love brush presets. Brush presets are by far one of my favorite things to create. So the preset manager is where everything else is. And you will see you can create infinite amount of things. It's awesome. If you have gradients that you use to do gradient mapping or just dragging gradients across your pictures, you can save gradients, you can save color swatches, you can download, you can often find free color swatches for, like if you do portrait stuff, and you have to often do different things with skin tones, match skin tones, blend skin tones, you can download a swatch of, I think it's like 40 or 50 different variations of skin tones, and it imports those swatches, and then you just pick them based on the skin tone you're working with and then start brushing to do your retouching. Or you just create your own. So they have them for all different ones. But the two you'll use probably more than anything else, especially for this assignment, is going to be the brushes and the tools. The tool presets fall in here, and so do the brushes. So the tool presets is always the last one, and this, once you click on it, you will very quickly see why. You want to have your initials on the ones you create, because it just has all of them in the list. So you will very easily be able to identify yours if you do something to make it a little bit more obvious. So if this is one of mine, and I'm just going to grab another one just because. Let's do the peanut dash. I'm not quite sure what that means, but we'll do it anyway. Fill with bubble pattern. All right, whatever. Yeah.
Where's the preset manager?
Under Edit, Edit, Presets, and then it's the first one in that flyout menu, Preset Manager. And then the export imports in that same preset menu too. Now the cool thing about presets and what you want to do for your assignment is that you can save multiple presets as one file, and then it will import all of them. So that one file contains hundreds of presets. Whatever you stick in it, you can add as much as you want to it. So what you have to do is make a conscious effort to make sure that you only have selected what you actually want to save. Because sometimes what happens is if nothing is selected, it saves out everything. And then when you go to import them, you have double of all the defaults, and it will drive you mad. But they have kind of changed that if nothing is selected, it won't let you save anything. In the past, if you had nothing selected, it would automatically save all of them. So they have changed it. It shouldn't be an issue, but just don't select them all, because that wouldn't be good. You actually get downgraded if you select them all, and I have to import, do different things with all of these. So you just command click, just like you would to select any file, you just command click the ones that you want to export. And the tools will all be grouped together, so all the tools will fall in the same menu. And when you're done selecting, you just hit Save Set. Choose a location, obviously. I've created a presets folder, so I'm going to just stick it in there. So you will end up with one file for the number of presets that you save out. The 5 for your assignment, but if you transfer and do stuff on your own, however many you have selected. So once I have that saved, now I have here, I have a TPL file. And I always have flashbacks of Office Space. Did you finish that TPS file? Nobody knows what I'm talking about. You all have to watch Office Space. That should be a requirement. It is. Office Space.
You with like Judge and
yes,
Aniston, if I'm not
yes, it's like the best, and it gets better. It's horrible the first time you watch it, and the more you watch it, the better it gets.
Like when that punk music comes on, they're smashing on.
They're smashing the printers in the field with bats.
I recognize that.
They have Funko dolls of them now of smashing the printers. Life is complete. So it'll create a TPL file. That one file contains all of them. Whereas your adjustments create each a separate file. And then when you do the brush presets, it's exactly the same. In that same menu, you go to brushes, select the ones. You can select the individual ones that you create and then save them out. Or as you're saving the brushes, you create a folder for them, and then you just have to click the folder and save that whole folder. But again, I'm going to have to record that piece for you guys because John took a little bit longer than I expected, which is okay. It was totally worth it. Yep. I figured he'd be like 15 minutes and done. I didn't realize the depth he was going to go into. I'm totally fine with it. It was. I was totally cool with it. I wasn't going to stop him.
Especially since after working at like the Maritime Museum,
working at the museum,
I've like learned a lot more about that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's actually this up in Gills Rock. There's the Death's Door Maritime Museum.
Oh yeah.
And they have like some actual artifacts up there from shipwrecks and everything.
Sweet. That's exciting.
Like, it's not that well known because like not a lot of people go up there.
No, they don't.
But,
Yeah.
like, my friend is the site manager there. And she's like basically, you know, the one who runs the museum up in Gills Rock.
Yeah.
And it's so nice.
Yeah, it is.
They have like this really cool like interactive thing, like you get like a tablet or something, and then you walk around with it, and then it gives you like basically a guided tour.
I love those.
Yeah.
I love those. So yeah, so the preset manager for the brushes is exactly the same, where you would just command click the ones that you want and then hit save set, and then it saves all of them as one file. So what you want to make sure you don't do with the brush and the tool presets in your assignment is turn in, save each one individually, and someone's going to do it because every semester it happens. Save each brush preset individually and turn in 15 separate files for your assignment. Your tool presets and your brush presets are each one file, an ABR file and a TPL file with all of them in that one file. So that's my compressed version of presets for you guys. So what you're going to do is 15 presets total, 5 brush presets. Again, I will record a brief little recording on the brush presets. They are really not hard to create. You can use existing ones in there and then just tweak the size, the feathering, the jitter, the scatter, there's all sorts of weird things, and then save it as a brush. And you can also create your own and save them, like a watermark, like Lena mentioned. You can create your own watermark, save it as a brush, and then all you have to do is stamp your watermark on all your pictures. So I'll record that part so you can see how that's done. In addition to just using existing ones and doing a bunch of different things and settings within there and then saving that so you don't have to do those adjustments every time you use the brush.
Do you have like some solution for brushes? Like I don't know, like I kind of like the one that I look like a snow or light.
Yeah,
or blah, blah, blah.
exactly. So you can take anything and make it a brush. I can take, like I said, text. I can take drawings. So if I have, actually, am I connected to my server? I've got 2 minutes to bring that one up. Not that server, this one. Please connect. Didn't connect when I logged in. Okay, come on. You can show it. I know there's a lot of files there. Question is, did I move it into the digital editing or did I color pages, car coloring, exams, projects? Oh, crud. Did I leave it in advanced image editing? Because I did this so very long ago. Brush. Shoot. I am definitely not going to find this as fast as I want. Flower brush, tape. Oh, getting closer. Getting closer. Brush libraries. So, like, I've done, okay, I can't find the file I want, but I'm pretty close. I've done things where I just scribble on a piece of paper or put tape on a piece of paper and I scan it in. And then you can make brushes. When we had this as a 5-hour class at one time, we would bring in a bunch of markers and crayons and things like that, and we would scribble all over, and then we would scan it into the computer. And then what we can do is we can take that, like fingerprints and all here,
Wow.
we can take that and make a selection, and as long as my background is white, or I could probably, let me try and, get rid of that. Let me see if I can, that's pretty close. Let's say I did a little bit better job than what I'm doing here. But I could save that as just by making a selection. I can go under Edit and Define Brush Preset, and I can save that as Tape 1. And now I have a tape stamp that, let me make it red so you can really see it on a new layer.
You can do that?
Oh, I have a black and white image. Hold on, Mode, RGB. Flatten.
So you define brush preset.
Define brush preset, and it saves it, and now it's a brush that I can stamp anywhere. I loved using that for certain things. So sketches that you have, watermarks, hand signatures, things like that, you can do all of that. If there are things that you like drawing, you could always use the Wacom tablets. We'll start using these over the next week or two. But during Flex Labs, I can always show you how to use that ahead of time. So we'll start using these over the next couple of weeks. So if you wanted to do like your hand signature for your brush preset, you can draw it right onto, oh, help if it was plugged in. I can't show you that. I know I'm out of time.
Is on Monday Flash Lab?
Yes, Monday 9:30 to 12:30 is Flex Lab.
Are we going to vote?
Someone set this up for a right-handed person. Curse you. Where's my brush? Curse you right-handed people.
Oh, that's right, you're left.
I sure am. Is this set up? No, that's set up to Zoom. These up. Brush much stuff.
We didn't use
There we go. So I can sign my name if I want to, and then I can turn this into a preset.
That could be super cool.
So we'll start using these, but if you want to use them for your assignment, I can show you during a flex lab.
Alright.
No, I